Good Sunday morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John Becker. Our focus this morning, City Council, and in particular, one of the races that is on your ballot in November. Let's take a close look at the map here and focus your attention on District 2. That's what we're looking at right now, and you can see what it covers there. Out through Kingston Pike and all the way into Bearden. You get a sense of the people in that district. Now let's talk about the candidates. There are two. Melody Watts was invited to this broadcast. She's not here, but we will hear from her in a taped interview. With us this morning, Nathan Honeycutt. He received 80% of the vote in the primary. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me here.
We'll get to your background momentarily. Let me introduce our panel. First, Susan Richardson-Williams. She's a Republican and runs her own PR firm.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. Don Bosch is a Democrat and runs his own law firm.
Good morning, John. Nice to be here.
Great to have you. Nathan, let's talk about what your background is and how it sets you up to run for this seat.
Absolutely. So first, I just want to actually say thank you all for hosting this show and bringing people together to have these important dialogues. So just really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I grew up on a horse farm in Greenville, Tennessee, just up the road from Knoxville. And some important things that happened to me growing up was my father actually started the local Habitat for Humanity chapter when I was in middle school. And so every Saturday and most Sundays after church, he'd drag me out to construction sites and we built homes for families in need. It taught me a lot about community and compassion and a love of construction. And inspired me to go to the School of Architecture here at UT. So I came to UT sort of during the Peyton Manning era, so I was win the national championship, so Vol for life. And was fortunate enough to study under a man named Stroud Watson, who was my mentor in college. He is actually the master planner behind Chattanooga's revitalization in the 90s. So a lot of the aquarium and the riverfront and Coolidge Park and all of that was part of his master plan. So learned a lot from him in terms of how you shape cities and what's important. After graduating near the top of my class, I went down to Atlanta and worked for a large firm down there. I got to travel the globe doing fun projects and living in places like Dubai and Amsterdam and China. But, you know, I've told you this before, John, the most important thing I did in Atlanta by far was meet my beautiful wife, Amy. So she was working as a Head Start teacher there. And we quickly got married, had 2 kids, and decided that, you know, we didn't want to raise our family in Atlanta. We wanted to come back and make Knoxville our home and raise our kids here. And we moved back in 2012 and have been here ever since. Now, since 2012, I'm now a partner at McCarty, Holsep & McCarty, and my wife is a teacher at Sheep, and we have 2 kids at West High School. So we love Knoxville, and we're excited to hopefully be able to give back to Knoxville in a bigger way now.
And you have been making the rounds in the district on your campaign. Before Susan and Don weigh in, what do you think is the biggest issue facing District 2 in this city?
Well, absolutely. So I think, one of the main reasons I'm running is because as an architect and a business owner, I see the sort of opportunities and challenges that are coming with growth from Knoxville. I mean, we're a product of our own success. But that's why I think we really need leaders who have the education, background, and training and passion for our community. So to protect what's special about Knoxville, because we don't want to lose who we are. And then to guide that growth in a really smart, thoughtful, community-driven way so that ultimately we end up with a city we're proud of to hand off to the next generation. Because let's face it, I want my kids to hopefully raise their kids here and my grandchildren, and ultimately it's about making sure we have a city that we're proud of for them.
So Nathan, you just said something that was interesting, to be in the city that we are and that we know, and I think everybody kind of has their view of what that might be. What specifically do you think Knoxville is, and how do you think you're going to continue whatever you say it is as a city council person should you be elected?
Oh, that's a great question, Don. So Knoxville has a lot of benefits. I mean, first and foremost, like our natural beauty, our connection to the Smoky Mountains and our surroundings are important to protect and to integrate into any growth that we have, right? So that we don't lose that connection to nature. And that we promote places like IMES and others that help us get out and Augusta Quarry and stuff that make us have that connection. We're also a culture of makers. We've got great entrepreneurship, we've got great small businesses here. So as we grow and expand, we can't lose focus of those people, and that we make sure those jobs are just as important. The Knoxville Entrepreneurial Center is a huge part of that, making sure that Knoxvillians can start Knoxville businesses and keep things local. That's been a big part of Knoxville's growth over the last decade, but what we're seeing is more and more national level developers coming in and doing larger and larger projects, and we need to make sure that Knoxvillians are part of those projects so that they have the soul of what's been developed previously.
On your website, one of your bullet points is plan with the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what you say is we require meaningful community input early in the planning process to foster trust.
We do.
Do you think Mayor Kincannon got everyone's trust when she didn't have as much transparency as she should have had on the sales tax and on Chilhowie?
I think, that, like, just using Chilhowie as an example, Emerald Youth is an amazing organization, first and foremost. I think all of the players involved were well-intentioned. Obviously, there was a large breakdown in communication and process. And so, the city might have to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. And that's okay, because ultimately we want to keep the players at the table, hopefully engage with the community in a better way going forward, learn our lessons there, and end up with a product that is great for East Knoxville and the community. I think that there are lessons to be learned, because yes, I do think that even when I'm out talking to people, that communication and transparency are a reoccurring thing that we need to work on and do better.
We've got to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee. We're going to be back with more specifics on both those questions, and also hear from Nathan's rival in this race when we come back on Inside Tennessee. Back on Inside Tennessee, Nathan Honeycutt, one of the candidates in District 2. We did invite the other candidate, Melody Watts, to join us this morning. She opted not to, but I did talk to her a couple of weeks ago prior to the primary. Here's that conversation. Let's talk about why you're running.
I really respect the residents of District 2. I'm a lifelong resident of this district, and I would be honored to represent the people there. So
let's talk more about your priorities in a second, but first, how do you come down on the proposed sales tax increase? Is that something you'd favor and would vote for in November?
I am opposed to the increased sales tax. I think we've got plenty of revenue, and we need to look into the details of how that money is being spent and making sure that it's being evenly dispersed to all the taxpayers.
Let's talk about your priorities for District 2. As you mentioned, geographically, it's diverse. It stretches from West Knoxville down basically into downtown. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the most important priority for you?
The first thing I'll be doing when I get in the office is reversing a recent city council decision to allow multi-family structures to be built in single-family detached homes. So, and a lot of the residents within this district are a bit frustrated with the current city council's decision on that.
It seems philosophically that has been the leadership's emphasis is higher density. That's something that you don't like to see.
I understand that we are the city of Knoxville, but I think that Knoxville is pretty unique as we do have that urban kind of feel, but I think there's been a push to try to make Knoxville like some other big city, but instead of having influence from the outside in, I think it's time for our city to be an influence to others.
So it sounds like you disagree somewhat with Mayor Kincannon and her idea that affordable housing is the most important priority aside from safety in the city.
I think it's interesting she's wanting to push for affordable housing while also increasing sales tax, because everything that you're purchasing to build a house is going to have additional tax on it. So that seems to be conflicting.
Okay. Anything else you'd offer in the last 30 seconds about why somebody should vote for you if they're living in District 2?
I will make sure to listen and open to discussion with the residents of District 2, and I want to make sure that their voice is heard. So. Well,
Melody Watts, we appreciate the time. Thanks very much. Yeah. Best of luck in the election.
Thank you.
That was Melody Watts prior to the primary. Again, Nathan Honeycutt winning the primary 80% to 20%. Susan, you wanted to follow up on one of your questions.
Did.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking about trust and
Sure.
transparency
Yeah.
with the sales tax in
Yeah.
Chilhowie. Are you for or against the sales tax? Do you plan on voting? Which way do you plan on voting?
No, absolutely. So, as you know, this is not up to city council or city council candidates. This is purely up to the voters of Knoxville. But, I have run on a platform of putting our neighborhoods first and, having neighborhood investment. So that is ultimately very important to me. I have had, like a lot of us, sort of trouble getting on board with the current proposal. And until I see a little more about making sure, because the first sort of hurdle for me is always, has every possibility been explored in the current budget for cost savings and efficiencies? And I haven't seen that sort of piece of the puzzle yet. And I need to see that before I fully get on board with the current proposal. But
I think you're the only one that hasn't seen that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, ultimately, it's not up to me, though. It's up to the voters. And what is up to, hopefully, me and the next city council is to make sure we hold the current administration accountable for any decisions or promises that are made today or during this election.
So Nathan, your opponent somewhat avoided the affordable housing question by deflecting it to we need it, and the mayor says she wants it, but she wants to increase tax.
Right.
You're a planner, you're an architect, you have that background.
Absolutely.
Where are you at on affordable housing, and how do we achieve it in Knoxville? Because I don't think anybody disputes that we need it.
Right.
But how do we achieve it, and what can city council do to make that happen?
That's a great question, Don. Absolutely. So I have got a couple strategies, and I know we don't have all day, so I'll try to keep them short. But I'm a planner, so I kind of get excited about this, and I want to talk a lot. But I think we need to establish what I call mixed-use opportunity zones along our corridors, right? So because when we talk about getting density, when we talk about getting housing options, it starts where you have your utility and sort of transportation infrastructure already in place.
So the corridor in your district would be Kingston Pike, Sutherland?
Right. That'd be Kingston Pike's a perfect example, like through Bearden. And so what we can do when we establish these zones is basically create sort of automatic pilot and TIF districts. So if you want to do a one-story Lululemon, retail building, that's your prerogative. But if you're willing to do a 3-story mixed-use project with apartments or condos on top, then you can automatically qualify for incentives without having to go through a lot of paperwork or process. I think we can also create what we call a mixed-use fund that'll help offset some of the initial costs of that project with short-term loans to make those projects happen. Then, it's almost like a wedding cake. So you start with the major core with your density, and then the second tier is the missing middle housing. Now, I'm not advocating that goes out into our precious neighborhoods, because we need to maintain those. What I'm talking about is the second tier off the corridors. I'm a big believer in townhomes. Chattanooga right now, if you go drive around Chattanooga, they are building townhomes starting at $290,000 for sale. And that's the kind of home, the kind of entry-level home that we need to be, building here in Knoxville, just like they are in Chattanooga, so that we can get people into home ownership. They can help them build equity, and then they can eventually afford.
And do we have regulation in the city that's preventing that right now?
We actually don't. There's actually a lot of key pieces sort of already in place for that. I think we can streamline it. I think I've proposed, one of the things that's hard, I think, for people developing at that scale is the design and engineering and permitting process. It'd be pretty simple for the city to produce sort of a standard set of pre-approved plans that could be a site adapted to any site. So you could literally go in, get a site, you could probably pick up a permit in 48 hours and pay for a pre-approved set of plans and be under construction within 2 weeks, right? And so just streamlining that process, making it easy to build that scale of home and get it off the ground and incentivizing it is what we need to do.
We've got to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with some final thoughts with Nathan Honeycutt, a candidate in District 2. He'll be on the ballot in November. Back with that conversation right after this. Welcome back to Inside Tennessee. We're talking about the city council election. This is a big one, Susan, Don, and Nathan, because we're going to see 5 new faces no matter what happens on city council. That's a member group of 9, so 5 of the 9 are going to be new faces. Susan?
I probably should ask him why in the world does he want to run for city council, but I'm not going to.
Right.
We're talking about housing and following up on housing.
Yeah.
We don't have enough for our homeless, obviously.
Very true. That is very true.
We have a major problem in our city, and we've been discussing it for decades.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it? Is it a housing problem? Is it mental illness? Is it just drug? What do you think about it, and what can you do about it when you are elected to city council?
Well, then hopefully. I've thought a lot about this because I totally agree with you. I'm currently developing a building on Broadway, and moving the headquarters for my office there. So I'm very familiar with our homeless situation. And, it's a complicated issue. But fortunately, we have a lot of great organizations in Knoxville already working to solve this. And I've met with a lot of their leaders already to understand the problem and understand what we can do at the city and in the private world to make it better, because it's going to take both. Not one entity can solve it. So, to oversimplify the problem, there's sort of two major sort of components of the homeless population, right? There's the mental illness and the substance abuse. And so to tackle that, we need to work with the state and McNabb to get an actual mental health hospital built here in East Tennessee.
Funny, we had one of those once.
We did, Lakeshore. Yeah, my mom actually worked there way back before we moved to Greenville. And mental health is very critically important to me because she spent her entire career in that. But so that we've got to get that done. The ball's kind of been started, but it's up to the next city council and the next administration to really get that across the finish line and make it happen, along with our state delegates. Then you've got the sort of economically challenged people, which is actually a large portion of the homeless. It's actually by far the largest portion. Again, I've met with the leaders at VMC and I've met with the leaders at CARM, and they have programs in place that already have a 90% success rate once they get someone off the street and into temporary housing, into moving them on and getting them off the streets permanently. They just don't have the scale that they need to do what we need to get it all done in Knoxville. So it's going to take both private donors and the city stepping up to just amplify the programs they've already got going successfully to tackle the current population we have and get them housed in temporary solutions to then make it permanent.
Do you feel like that might be the best, highest use for an increase in our sales tax, should that happen?
I think I'd like to see the affordability component of the sales tax. I think I'd like to see it split into a couple of things. One is, yes, I think we can amplify the programs, the homeless programs that all these organizations are already doing successfully, and help get them to a scale like Houston, which has done it very well, to help that population. I'd also like to see us take a bit of that money, if it passes, and make housing more affordable for the people who serve Knoxville. In meeting with Chief Noel and the firefighters, and my wife's a teacher, so I know how much our public school teachers make. I think we need to first and foremost make Knoxville affordable for the people who serve Knoxville. And so I'd like to see us give tax relief, property tax relief, to those people so that they can live in the communities and afford to live in the communities that they serve.
We touched on Chilhowie Park and the potential sale of that at the outset of our conversation. I didn't hear from you how you would vote if you were on council right now and you had to make a choice. Do we sell right now, or do we hang on to Chilhowie Park and revisit it down the line?
Yeah.
What say you?
That's a great question. I will say, Burlington in particular is very close to my heart. I was president of the Community Design Center 6 years ago. When we brought that community together, I say we, it was really the community leaders that did it. The Design Center was just there to help facilitate, to help establish the plan for the streetscape improvements and the fire station that are now being built, right, 6 years later. So I see the sort of ripple effects that we were able to establish, and I'm very proud of that. I will say, I would rely heavily on the district rep. I will tell you first and foremost, I don't have the heartbeat of that community. I would rely heavily on what they want and what they see and what they think their community needs. As an outsider looking in, again, like I said earlier, I feel like Emerald Youth is a great organization. I feel like everything was well intentioned. I think given the communication and the process breakdown that's obviously taken place, I think they need to hit the pause button, and they need to take a step back and make sure they have the community engagement before we proceed.
Only about a minute left. I wanted to get your take on another issue facing the city, and that is the future of the Gay Street Bridge. We just saw council authorize some money to study what's next. You're an architect.
Yeah.
You have experience in projects like this.
Yeah.
What can you tell people about what you think will happen there?
Absolutely. We all have affinity for the Gay Street Bridge. It's sort of part of our iconic skyline. It is. I'm also a historic preservationist at heart. Fortunate to just win the Preservationist of the Year award for Knox Heritage, my company. So I'm all about trying to preserve our history and save what we can when it makes sense. Because if we are able to renovate something and make it useful for the next generation, great. But if we can't, and it needs to come down, and we need to make a new bridge so that cars, people, and bikes can traffic and we can connect to South Knoxville, then that's what we need to do. And the city's taking the right steps at the moment. They've corrected the immediate issues so that we could at least get it open, and they're studying the possibilities of reopening it to vehicular traffic.
Nathan Honeycutt, we appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, and best of luck in the election.
Thank you very much. I just appreciate you all having me on. I appreciate this show and having the dialogue. It's important to our community, and I'm excited to be running for the City Council seat in the 2nd District. Thank you.
You bet. We'll certainly check back in. We're going to take a quick break, and then these two will weigh in on the issues of the day right after this. Back on Inside Tennessee. Susan, you have a lead on a fundraiser going on that happened this week that could say a lot about the future of Tennessee politics. Explain.
It could. As you know, I always refer to Speaker Cameron Sexton as the most powerful politician in Tennessee. He had a fundraiser at the governor's residence this week that raised over $1 million.
And why is that significant?
Well, it's significant because he's running for state rep, obviously, and he'll be
We haven't had a $1 million state rep race yet, I don't believe.
No, not that I know of.
And I don't think Cameron will see an opponent that
Probably
will
not.
raise something
So
close
the question
to that.
becomes, why is he raising that kind of money? And I asked him that question, and the answer is because there may be some time in the future, and we don't know when or what he might run for. But it is interesting that he has that kind of money on one night. I think that's very significant for him.
Last week we talked about the vitriol online and just what will make anyone depressed if you go on to X or you go on to any kind of social media in the last week. It's just been heartbreaking to see some of the interaction that we've seen. But Don, what is the story people should be talking about that they're not right now?
Kind of the assault on the First Amendment right now, and we're really seeing it all the way around, but particularly from President Trump and from the agencies which are under the presidential control. But we just saw this week, for example, the FCC managed to pull Kimmel, because Kimmel's been very critical in his comedic style of President Trump, and it's really flown under Trump's skin for a very long time. But this culture of unfortunately, Charlie Kirk said something that was right. There is no hate speech. It's all protected speech. It's ugly. It's terrible. I remember, Skokie, Illinois, and the Nazi March a number of years ago. It's terrible, but it is permissible. And we live in a society where that should be cherished and treasured even when it's ugly. And we're losing it. And we're now, it's become so political that if you say something, they're attacking political speech and opinion speech. And that's a dangerous affront to democracy as we've known it all our lives. And I think we'll pay attention to it.
Susan, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what we really need to look at much deeper is the social media that's fake. I mean, there is so much on there that's fake. You can't believe anything anymore. And the AI stuff that you've seen, I mean, it's really
social media
depressing.
is not news.
It is really depressing. That's what's happened to us.
Longtime professor with the Poynter Institute said, "Seeing is no longer believing."
It's true.
But try to be a skeptic and not a cynic. We leave you with that on this Sunday morning. We'll see you next week.